Good morning, everybody. It's Sean Bishop from Bishop Instruments and Bows talking to you today about the Naples Maker Vincenzo Sannino. I thought I'd just play at the beginning so I don't get too nervous later on when I have to play. My wife has said to me that I play the same boring little piece every time I go on one of these videos. If it's anyone's birthday today, let me know and I'll play happy birthday, but it has to be your birthday and I will check on Facebook later on. Okay, now we're talking about Vincenzo Sannino of Naples. He was born in 1879 and died in 1969. Now, very prolific maker and obviously lived quite a long time, as you've just heard. Now, he is the only Naples maker that managed to escape the claws of the Galliano Postiglione school, leave Naples, and he moved to Rome in sort of 1915, and he changed the style of his violins. So in Naples, we had 200 years of Galliano rule, the Galliano family, Niccolo, Gennaris, the brothers, and then going on, from there we had Alfonso della Corte, who died in 1884. We had Vincenzo Postiglione, the prolific maker of the late 19th century of Naples, and his student Alfredo Contino. Pistucci is also in there as well. All these makers made in a very similar style. When you look at a Galliano violin, when you look at a Postiglione violin, generally, Contino, I've bought a few things here. Okay, so here's a Giovanni Pistucci of Naples, and you see that scroll, very small squish scroll, that is a Galliano copy, as is this violin, which is probably circa 1900. Actually, I think this one is 1890, so this is one a labeled violin by Pistucci. Now, Vincenzo Sannino, he, like most of the makers of that period, started making very early on. I think he was 14 years old when he started making his violins. They always generally learned to play the violin as well before they started making. So most of these makers were violinists. He is an intriguing maker because he used many different models. This one here, made I think in about 1910, 1915, was made just before he went to Rome or just during his transition to Rome. It's a Ventapane style copy, and one way we can tell about that is it has very short corners. If you look, there's no bee sting, we call it, when the purfling can go elongated. This one doesn't. Now, the wood, and also it's not really antiqued. Now, Sannino was one of the first makers from the Naples school, well, not sorry, he was one of the first makers when he moved to Rome that started antiquing. At the same time, in Rome in 1915, 1920, we had the great Simone Sacconi. Okay, now he was I'd say the word child prodigy, genius, because he started making at 12. By 14, he was well known in Rome. By 16, he'd made his first Strad copies. So if you see any of the violins of his, you'll know that they are incredible copies. His Guadagnini copies in particular are exceptional. Now, Sannino, back to Sannino, he was busy copying up to 10 different makers. So I've seen Guadagnini copies, Stradivari, Galliano, Presenda. Like I said, this one's a Ventapane. And I'm just going to pull. At the same time in Rome, we had Enrico Politi, who was making copies. Here's a copy, one of his violins. And if you saw my Facebook Live video last week, when I talked about Degani, Enrico Politi made this violin in 1930, 1940 in Rome, and he stuck in a Degani label. So this has a Eugenio Degani label saying it's a copy of a Guadagnini. Now in reality, it's a very loose Guad copy. It's certainly nothing to do with Degani, but of course they were pre-labeling their instruments because financially it was more viable to sell dead makers' work. Sannino was no different, and some of his copies are quite close to the originals. When he was dying, actually, in his last years of his life, when he died, there was 20 instruments of his left, and they were sold to Sacconi in New York. So I wonder if some of the late Sacconi violins are actually Vincenzo Sannino. Certainly in the white, there's probably a few that are, because he did buy 20 of them via the Lucci family in Rome. that's about all I want to say to you today. Like I said, Vincenzo Sannino, what to look for in Vincenzo. This violin is a classic example of predating. So it's labelled, that would have made Sannino 4 years old when he made it. So who knows why that label is in there. It's an authentic label, but the dates are all wrong. And so what to look for in Sannino, very difficult. Depending on what model he did, he varied it completely. So if you are looking for a Sannino, I would say you have to show to someone that knows what Sannino's work is. Okay. First of all, is pins. Depending on the model, Guadagnini, he'd do Guad pins. Strad models, Strad pins. We're talking about the marks on the back where the violin is set onto the back and front. Anyway, that's it for today. It's a bit of a scramble when there's so many of the Naples makers, but Vincenzo Sannino is one of the greats. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.